Hi everyone, and welcome to Meet the Candidates panel for Warringah Chamber of Commerce. My name's Matt Tanks. I'm the Vice President of the Warringah Chamber of Commerce, and I will be Tony Jonesing the Q&A panel tonight. Today we've got four people who are running as candidates for the Curl Award, who will be here to talk about business on the beaches. We've got some questions to put to the panel, and we've got some questions from business owners and members from our chamber. So without further ado, let's get into it. We want to start today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and extend the respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who might be participating in this webinar tonight. Now, we also want to thank our sponsors who make all of this possible. We're here in ASKI Live Media studios, so I want to pay a special mention to these guys who are allowing us to film and distribute this today. And they're also a platinum sponsor of the Chamber of Commerce, along with Shaw & Partners and CG Digital Services. These guys have made it possible for us to support all of our members and business on the beaches and be a voice for business on the beaches through a really tough time through lockdown, because we are a membership organisation run by volunteers, so it's not possible to do what we do without the help of our sponsors. So we want to say thank you to you guys. Our gold sponsors are Community Bank at Freshwater, HSBC, McCann Accounting, Smallwoods Lawyers and Travelodge Manly Warringah. So thank you guys for your support. Now, formalities out of the way, let's get into talking about the questions that we need to talk about. I want to introduce the candidates and allow them to just give a quick intro on who they are, where they've come from, and what their key points are for the campaign coming up. So first, I want to introduce a current councillor, albeit they technically have wrapped up their time as of the last 24 hours when we're filming this. Sue Hines, part of the Your Northern Beaches independent team, has been serving on council for a number of years, runs small businesses on the beaches, and has a real heart for community and business. So, Sue.
Thank you, Matt. My name's Sue Hines. As Matt just said, I'm running for the Your Northern Beaches independent team, currently going to be running for the Curl Award. My passion is small business. I have been involved with the business community for over 20-something years. I hate to think about how long that actually is, but I've certainly been involved with many business membership organisations and previous director of the Business Enterprise Centre. I'm very keen to talk tonight or today about the different questions that there are, because I think there's still a hell of a lot to do that we can do to support small business on the Northern Beaches. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next I want to introduce the Greens candidate also in Curl. Kristen Glanville is coming to us with a background in law or environmental law, and currently taking on a PhD. And why not? Let's also run for council at the same time. So, Kristen, come on down.
Hi, my name's Kristen Glanville. I'm an environment and planning lawyer by background, and I've worked in private practice in a couple of international law firms where I've advised a range of clients on environment and planning law, everything through from development through to waste. In that time, I've advised businesses, I've advised big box retailers, construction companies, smaller businesses, and I have a really good understanding of what it is that makes dealing with council and other regulators really frustrating for all stakeholders, not just business, but also community groups. And I think that there's a lot of common ground to be achieved in making council run better for everyone. As you can probably guess from my professional background, creating thriving and sustainable communities is my passion. And I see small business as a really important part of that. Local employers mean that people don't have to commute long distances to work using up carbon emissions. It means that we don't have to transport goods all across the world if we can get them locally in our community. So I think that there's a lot of common ground between having sustainable and thriving town centres, but it requires us to have planning instruments that really think thoughtfully about how we achieve good planning and have a really good mix of land uses and avoid conflict with residential users. So I'm really happy to hear what everyone has to talk about. And I'm really happy to be in contention to be your councillor at the next term of council.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, next we have David Walton. David has also been serving the community for many years, more recently on council, but also in his past life in the police force and also advising businesses. So, David.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. David Walton is my name. I'm a former police commander here on the Northern Beaches, and interestingly, I had a banking career at the same time. So I was a board member of the previously the Police Credit Union, which converted to a bank. And the last 7 years of my policing career, I was the chairman of the police bank. So that gives me a significant amount of policing experience, and I was a senior police officer, but also a non-executive director and chairman for 7 years of a APRA regulated institution in Australia. So probably the highest level of governance, and so that should be on banks because of the amount of money that they hold of other people's money. I was also on the Audit and Risk and Improvement Committee with Sue, my colleague. We brought about significant change to improve risk management, the transparency, the strategic internal audit plan. So significant improvements to start the improvement of your council. But there's lots more work to be done. I still see cultural issues in the organisation. A little bit too much inward looking, not customer focused. We can keep working on that. We need to have a bit more strategic planning, a bit better strategic planning, more quantitative measures in with our KPIs on our management to hold them to account and really turn the focus towards the customer. And that includes you business people. So looking forward to the forum. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, we have Brent Clifford, who is the Labor candidate for Curl as well. Brent has done what many of us have done in the chamber and on the Northern Beaches, done the corporate thing for a while and then moved out to start his own business, and now taking on, why not? Let's run for council as well. So, Brent, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Sometimes I wonder the same thing. As you said, from the Labor Party, we fight for a fair go for everyone, and as a result, that gives opportunities for everyone to thrive. I'm a small business owner myself, and I'm engaged to a small business owner here on the beaches. Both of us here in the Northern Beaches have found both good opportunities, but also frustrations with running and trying to scale up small business. But I think overall, finding an opportunity to have safe, accessible and connected communities will allow business to grow and further develop throughout the Northern Beaches. I bring an experience of both working in public sector, working in private enterprise and working for myself, and starting from the grassroots up in doing that to the Northern Beaches. And I think I understand the frustrations and the successes that people will have as a result of that. I've been on audit and risk committees of Australia's largest public transport provider, and I know what it is to manage risk and take opportunities when there are risks for rewards. And that's what I'll hope to bring today. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. All right, guys. So that's the formal stuff over. So let's try and have a little bit of fun. It is interesting having these things with no crowd to create an atmosphere. So we're just going to try and settle into this and see how we go. The way this is going to work is we've obviously got 4 candidates from different groups and parties. So we all really want to get in and have a good chat. But what we're going to do is I will ask a question, again, Q&A Tony Jones style, and then I will pass it over to one of the candidates to start the ball rolling, and we'll go from there. So first question, I'm going to move towards Councillor Hines to start with, and that is, what can council and the community do to help local businesses moving out of lockdown and back into a new normal?
That's a great question, Matt, and thank you. Behind the scenes, actually at council, we've discussed this a lot, not only just amongst councillors, but also with our strategic community groups that we have on different topics, and particularly our Economic and Smart Communities group, and also I know I also chair the Participation and Partnership group. So it's been great actually having different people's input. The one thing we didn't know, reflecting back, and we all had different guesses, I know my colleague Dave certainly had thoughts about this as well, was how would a rebound out of COVID actually look like? Would it be a slow burn up, or would it be a bounce up? How would that actually look? And how would the community react to that? Because as we know, there were people who were dead keen to kind of get out and just get out of lockdown, but there's also a part of the community who are quite fearful and quite nervous about their health and the health of their loved ones. So it was definitely, I think, from discussing it around the table and putting in different people's points of view, we could see that to attract people back to their town centres, we'd need things to be happening at those centres to bring them there. So we were discussing things like having music, bringing entertainment in, but of course the layer on top of that was, how much can you actually do anything? Because if you promote something, especially on the Northern Beaches, it's not hard to get thousands of people turning up. And that's what you don't want if you've still got health orders as a layer on top of things. We discussed things like the fact that the weather's warming up, naturally people get attracted back to the beach. But trying to bring people away from the beach and to the centres that are away from those naturally very attractive areas anyway, was one of the ways that we were looking at doing things. So there's different events that are being planned. There's also some major events being planned as well to bring people back. The locals themselves, I think the one great thing that's come out of COVID is the locals have a deeper appreciation for their local centres. Whereas before, everyone's routine was get up in the morning and do the school run and then off to work. They're at home now. And for the first time, they're actually wandering their own streets, they're visiting their own areas. And I think there's a great opportunity for locals to really be aware of what shopping local actually means. There's been huge distress in the area over watching local businesses close. It's very hard to have a brick and mortar business these days because, of course, people love online shopping. That actually makes it really tough for a small business owner who wants to try and retail. So retail's really struggling. Hospitality has been a huge issue. Hospitality, we know everybody loves their coffees on the Northern Beaches. I think that's kind of runs in everyone's blood. But the reality of it is that trying to get people back to enjoying their local restaurants is going to be an issue because of staffing. So I think there's a lot of things that people can do to work together, and there's a whole heap I could say on this obviously, but I'll leave it for other people to add.
That's all right, thank you. Councillor Walton, or David, being an incumbent, I thought I'd throw this over to you as well. What do you think we can do as a community to help people come back into this new normal? But it was really good response about hospitality and retail and getting back to town centres. But we're also we have a lot of cottage industry type of businesses, support services, and work from homers and all that sort of stuff. So overall, could we be doing more to help them bounce back out of lockdown?
Okay, so it's quite a complex question. And because there's a few layers of government involved in that, there's federal, state and local. So what can we do locally? Well, certainly from a local business perspective, the most important thing is to reduce the red tape, speed up decision making, work with state government in relation to some of the planning laws. And certainly as we were in the early parts of the pandemic moving out for the first and second time, we were being guided very much by the public health orders because that's what the experts were telling us, and they were dictated by the Health Act, of course. But certainly some of the emerging research from a health perspective around Australia and overseas was that it was safer to be outside. So we worked with the state government in relation to changing the planning laws and activating our streets. So most of you residents would have seen that a lot of our streets have been activated. And a lot of brainstorming did occur, and management actually did step up in that regard to, well, can we move gyms outside? Can we move restaurants outside? Certainly cafes have moved out, licensed premises under certain circumstances, because there's a whole host of legislative requirements in relation to work health safety, other licensing laws, etc. So what can council do? I've always of the view, having a private and public sector background, is that governments need to reduce the red tape, reduce the costs, and get out of the way of business, and of course put rules and boundaries around that business. And although local government doesn't legislate, we certainly work with the state and federal government in relation to legislation, but we do put rules around our premises. So that's really important, and practical aspects of what council can do. And again, it comes back to the culture, and I must say, Sue and myself and Sarah Grattan have worked really hard in getting a bit more accountability, openness and transparency in this organisation, to the point where 3 years ago we removed the previous CEO and brought in another one. But we'll keep plugging away.
How's that for an example? Well done. Brent had a hand up. You want to join in on this one?
Yeah, if I may, thank you. I echo the view of reducing red tape. I know businesses in the local government area who experienced such a significant barrier to opening up mid-lockdown. So council took one business I can think of 7 months to approve a change in retail front from a clothing store to a general retail manufacturer. Business needs confidence and commitment. And what we're talking about is a new normal. We're not dwelling on the past with lockdown orders. We know now that we can move forward with confidence, and that's what people need. When can we start business, and how can I continue to work through the processes that require me to have confidence in my supply chain and the ability to get my items to market? And I think that's the important thing that council need to deliver. Through that is a risk management process. So we understand the major risk is around ventilation and fresh air movements. So should be applauded on the ability to get out, as David mentioned, to open up green spaces. But what we have learned is that we need accessible, connected green spaces that allow business and their communities, who are the punters trying to purchase, and this could be business to business or business to frontline, access to their market. So you mentioned the cottage industries, the small time players, the retailers, the hospitality people, they were reasonably well supported throughout the last 2 years. But we need to give incentives to creative industries, to those boutique manufacturers, to give them confidence that they can get their products to market and get out and about. And I think people really want a connection to what they're purchasing. Online retail is fast fashion, and that's not what the beaches are about. We're a connected, educated community who need a meaningful link to the things we're purchasing, whether that be services, whether it be education and training, or whether it be a tangible manufactured product.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brent. In the same vein, I actually had the next one that I was going to throw back to you, and I might still do that. So the next question was, in the Northern Beaches Council's 2028 strategic plan, makes reference to promoting the northern beaches as an attractive place to establish a business. We know that there's little pockets around here where that does happen. We know that anecdotally we've got Manly that's kind of a little mini hub for environmental startups and things like that. So how do we as a LGA, as a council, as a community, deliver on that and make this an attractive place to start a business?
The plan itself talks about three key things in the aspects you've mentioned about business. And then interestingly, the very next part has another three key goals, and both of them link to this idea of connected communities, connected infrastructure, connected transport solutions, connected communities and connected green spaces, which is the same thing we've just spoken about. This needs to be away from this typical build infrastructure and they will come, roads, more car parking issues, those sort of barriers to business that we already see on the beaches. So what we're talking about here is meaningful connectivity through good public transport hubs, through good usable green spaces, to give business the confidence that they can get their product to market or they can connect their services, and as you've mentioned, the creative industries, the service providers, those B2B type enterprises. That's also about connected IT and communications infrastructure. We see a lot of co-working spaces, which is really clever, but when retail or manufacturing or office environments are connected with residential buildings above them, which is a clever design we've got a lot of on the beaches, there's difficulties getting information technology infrastructure into those premises. We need to break down those barriers, whether it be through 4G or NBN, working with other areas of government, putting that in the development application process to show that there's meaningful connections into the business so businesses can thrive from word go. Let's stop putting barriers in front of business.
All right, this is a topic that everybody wants to talk about, so I'm going to pass over first to Sue and then come back to Kristen. Sue, your thoughts?
From a strategic point of view?
Yeah, how do we make it a reality that this is a place where businesses want to come to establish themselves?
Okay, so something that the Northern Beaches lacks is a brand, if you like. Why do business here? I've always thought in the back of my mind that if the beaches actually did get together, and they have now, that the one thing that makes, I think, the Northern Beaches a really special place is its environment, and therefore there's the opportunity. We know that the residents and the community here really care about the environment, even more so after COVID now, and the opportunity really is to brand it as being a special place. It's a healthy place. It's a place that you can be active, you can go to the beach, you can do your bike rides, you can discover the walking trails that we have a whole heap of and discover different things in that way. You've also got sailing, you've got boarding, you've got all kinds of active environmental things that you can actually do that immerses you into that environment. On top of it, we've also got a health aspect of that. We've got a brand new hospital here. So there's lots of medical places starting to pop up, but there is also a very strong underground of natural therapies in this area as well. So I really think that in one way, we could actually do a whole heap of destination management, if you like, about coming to this area to come and be happy and healthy again, whether you're coming just for a mini break or whether you're going to stay for a couple of weeks. I always have thought that that's a missed opportunity, particularly because if we get known as an area that cares about our community, wouldn't it be great if the people who came to visit here, whether it's your relatives, whether it's your far-flung friends from overseas, and the recent destination management plan works that were done has shown that most of the people who come to the Northern Beaches, most of those tourists are actually visitors, interestingly enough. And it makes sense. If you've got an aunt or somebody who lives down at the beach, don't you want to go there for Christmas? So there's a whole opportunity to actually teach people that if you come here, we don't want single-use plastics. We want to do things differently. And that whole education piece could be all wrapped into it, so that when people come here they go, oh, actually that's right, this place does things differently. There's been an education piece going on quietly in the background of trying to explain to businesses why being environmentally aware is important, and that's slowly coming through. But there's also another thing from a strategic point of view, is I don't believe that there is a one rule fits all. The Northern Beaches is quite unique in its different pockets. Manly is a major destination tourism area, and that needs to be treated in one way as opposed to other areas. We've got 21 beaches, for goodness sake. Some of those are our beaches. I know everyone thinks their beach is their local beach, but there's real opportunities to have a connection with different industries around the Northern Beaches to make them attractive for those industries. There is a complaint at the moment from certain industries to me about the fact that there isn't enough of a business. So normally, if you think of like a kitchen place, you normally have lots of kitchen places so that it's an attraction to come there. So in that space, I'm being given the wind up already. I can keep going on this. There's lots of opportunities. There's so much opportunity, and I think we need to nail it.
I can vouch for the fact that Sue could talk for literally 4 to 5 hours on this particular topic, or any topic, so it's all good. But with that, now we've kind of blended that question in with the environmental question, and I'm very aware that we have someone on the panel that has a background in environmental law and planning. So let's go there. Kristen, with that question, as well as how do we make the environment part of a business strategy, what are your thoughts for the Northern Beaches?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two elements to that. In my professional career, I've advised lots of businesses and mostly been on the other side of council. And so I've been on the other side of good councils that are flexible, creative, have a can-do attitude. And I've been on the other side of councils that are sort of like a kind of rock edifice of which nothing happens, and there's no real will to do things differently or think creatively. And so I think that it's important to foster a council that has that kind of positive attitude that is flexible, because we as on council, I'll freely admit, I'm not going to be an expert in every type of industry and business in our area, but the community are our experts. The people who actually work in the industries know what they need and can tell us, what type of support they need. Approaching a lot of what I see as barriers for local businesses and all sorts of businesses in our area is one where we need to carefully think about land use management. And I think that has two really important aspects. I've advised clients where residential has started to encroach on our commercial employment lands, and it generates things like noise complaints, makes it really hard for businesses to get deliveries early morning, noise complaints, fume complaints, and I'm not personally convinced that things like shop top housing really facilitate the kinds of mix of businesses that you need to create a sustainable economy. I mean, I've advised on shopping centres where they think really carefully about the mix of retail that they have, because if you have 15 dress shops in a shopping centre, that's not a self-sustaining economy. And I think that that's something that council can take a really strategic approach to, and get retail economists to think carefully about not just what industries we want to foster, but also having a diversity of businesses in our retail precincts and commercial areas so that they can all feed off each other. The other thing is that I think that there are opportunities for us to activate some of our public spaces a lot better, and I think that that sort of also has a win for COVID related things where we can use a lot more of our open air. I mean, I think the Corso has really nice markets that it's been so lovely for them to pop up again, but there are so many wasted parts of the Northern Beaches where you walk down an empty corridor and you think, this would be lovely if there was a little pop-up bar here of an evening. This would be so nice if there were little stall holders who were selling things along here. And, I don't necessarily think that the council should just start selling off all its public land, but there are opportunities to share council space with the community and with businesses. and make them really thriving places. So yeah, those are kind of the two aspects in terms of, I guess, strategic looking at. In terms of your other question about the kind of conflict, as you put it, between the environment and business. I mean, I'm on the board of directors of a community-owned solar investment company, and I don't see there as being a conflict, but it does require you to think a bit differently. It's a long-held Green statement that there's no economy on a dead planet. If we aren't thinking about how we're managing our resources long-term, we can't continue to have an economy that is basically churn and burn, where we take resources, use them, and then put them in the garbage and don't think about them again. It's not a sustainable way to run an economy or a planet. So I think that having good environmental stewardship, thinking about things like climate change risk. I mean, I've banged on a lot in my professional career about looking at what climate change risk means for your business, means better planning of those risks in terms of supply chain disruption. I mean, people talk about the costs of taking action on climate change, but during the massive bushfires, we saw the reality that if you aren't planning for climatic-related risks, a whole state being on fire is pretty bad for the economy. So I don't think that there is a conflict, but it does require us to think a little bit differently. And I mean, to give a kind of anecdote about this conflict not being a true conflict, the company that I'm director of crowdfunds solar panels for businesses. So for example, we put solar panels on the Four Pines Brewery at Manly, and the investment came from the community, from small investors who put in small contributions to then loan to Four Pines the money to put the solar panels. And I see that as a win-win for both that company in terms of it's had a really great ability to connect with its community and with investors who are from their community, and therefore I know myself, if I'm at Manly, I need to go to Four Pines because I need them to keep paying for their solar panels. And they've also been able to reduce their energy costs because solar is so much cheaper now than getting power off the mains. So I don't think there is a conflict, but it requires collective action, it requires creativity, and I'm pretty confident that as a community and as a council we can do it if we have the right attitude.
Great, thank you. I'll pick up on one of the things that you mentioned there about open spaces and making better use of it. I'm going to break with the order here a little bit, because one of our questions that came from a member was actually asking why aren't there more opportunities for commerce in some of our open spaces at the moment. So I might turn that over to the sitting councillors. So Dave, can I start with you? Thoughts on that and using some more of our open spaces for commerce?
So I'm big on this organisation being an enabler for our local businesses. My observation, again coming from police, are a very efficient and don't use a lot of resources organisation, but from a commercial perspective, I'm not big on governments taking the lead here. So we need to enable. We need to create an environment where organisations, the private sector, come and we enable them. So that's part of changing the culture of the organisation. And I must say we've been chipping away at it. It is a big bureaucracy and a bit too inward looking, but it is changing to be customer focused. And we need the right people to be elected on the council to continue that cultural change in the organisation, so that we create the environment where the private sector come to us, and as you were saying a little bit earlier, that we don't inhibit good ideas. Of course, they've got to comply with all the legislative and planning rules, but we facilitate, we enable businesses to get on with their business and create well-performing businesses that employ people and create those vibrant communities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Definitely in part. I think where I'll go, and I'll turn it over to Sue as well for a second, is in a practical sense, how do we make that happen? And another question that we circulated earlier was, there are times where businesses see the way council's set up, and David, you've talked about being more customer focused and all the rest of it, which is great. But at the moment, we do see council set up in a way that doesn't enable that. So practically, or it doesn't enable it all the time. Yeah, like you said, it's a bureaucracy and these things happen. So practically, how do we change that culture to become more of an enabler? So Sue, can I throw it to you, and anybody feel free to jump in?
Okay, so I think I'm probably looking at it more of what is happening right now, and I think we're living in really exciting times, because as what has been mentioned earlier, there's a whole heap of legislation and rules and laws, and you know, depending on whether you're a cosmetician or whether you're a brewery or whatever you are, there's a whole heap of rules and laws that you have to adhere to. The wonderful thing about COVID has been that to support the businesses, a lot of those legislations have been currently relaxed. So it means that for the first time, certain restaurants, cafes are allowed to go outside, that there's road management around them to make sure that pedestrians have a safe movement, that there's been all different types of opportunities at the moment for businesses to come to council and ask, can I do X? If I'm a hairdresser, can I go in the park? And the answer has been yes. So at the moment, the council has been working really hard to enable the dreams and wishes, because gosh, I mean, in any bureaucracy, no offence, there tends to be a whole lack of imagination. But the business owners, they have a whole heap of imagination. So they're being asked to come with the idea so that things can be relaxed. So for the first time, especially during the lockdown, parking signs were changed overnight to enable people to be able to drop in, pick up and go, so that there wasn't parking issues for businesses. So there has been a real focus there. What I'd like to see is a lot of this continue. One of the issues I believe could be a conflict on those public spaces. The community themselves quite rightly say this park is ours. So if something happens in that park that's going to be different and unusual, there will have to be a bit of community consultation to make sure that the community are on board as well. And I do believe now is a great opportunity to do things outside together with your local community, because the local community are the ones walking around going, we've got to support our local businesses. That's great. Let's get on with it.
That's good. All right. So in these kind of panels, particularly at the moment, we spend a lot of time talking about COVID and all that sort of stuff. But we've always been a big believer in Warringah Chamber about looking ahead, looking to the future. So just in the interest of time, I'm actually going to skip ahead a couple of questions, if you don't mind, because I want to talk about the next generation. So, Brent, I'm going to direct this one to you. How do we build the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners on the beaches?
I think it's a brilliant question, because entrepreneurship is around a mindset. It's about being able to take an idea and grow it, springboard it, collaborate with like-minded people, and then scale it up. And I think that's a good link to the discussion we've just had about creating accessible, usable green spaces. So we don't want to sit back and wait as a council for unsolicited ideas to come forward. We end up with barangaroo type situations. What we want is a meaningful strategic plan, a living document that allows entrepreneurs to grow and develop. Through lockdown, you said don't focus on this, but during that period, people have been at home thinking, gee, I've got a wonderful idea for a business and that could really work. But what we want to do is create an environment where that idea can thrive. People are at home thinking, I just don't know how to take that step. So what council needs to do is enable that through things like open mic nights for business, or springboarding nights, or business immersion adventures, where people have done these things well, and we've got great entrepreneur hubs here on the beaches, but people might not be aware of them, or they're intimidated to go and find out more. So council, through both connecting people, and entrepreneurship is about connections and relationships, and also creating a springboarding environment where people are encouraged to take that first risk and jump in and have a crack. So anyone that has a fair go and a fair crack should be rewarded, and that's what council needs to encourage.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, looking to the future, business is critical to creating the jobs in the local area that our kids need, so that, let's face it, so they can afford to live here. So what can we do to attract the type of jobs to this area that will actually create the type of career that people need? And in particular, right now, we're looking at a hybrid revolution where corporates are letting people work from home or from local hubs. What could we do differently to, again, using the word enable that on the Northern Beaches? I'll throw this one over to David to start with.
Oh, thank you. So we touched on earlier about our business and industrial and office lands, and we have limited. We also have a situation where we won't be expanding out. We won't be expanding into the national park. There's no appetite for that. And because real estate is so valuable and in such high demand, because we live in a magnificent part of Sydney and it's a magnificent part of the world. So it's in huge demand, and we see that in our property prices. And there's not a lot of intervention we can have on supply and demand. When the demand's high and the supply is fairly static, it's only increasing slightly, of course the prices are going to go up. Economics 101. However, we can create an environment in our existing industrial lands where, in my opinion, and we haven't discussed this from a strategic perspective, we need to go up in those industrial estates because we can't go out. We know that some of our very successful businesses have grown on the Northern Beaches and had to move out because they've had those growth constraints. And these are some of the businesses where they're paying really high wages. Of course, we're limited in relation to sort of lower paying manufacturing businesses, because people, they have to come in from outside the area. So it's a situation where we actually have to grow and we have to go up in our industrial estates. That's a simplistic idea that needs to be modelled, and it needs to be worked on, and it needs consultation, and we need case studies to be looked at, and we need the successful companies that we have on the Northern Beaches to come and tell us, as has been stated by the other panel members. We need them to tell us what they need from us to help them, enable them and facilitate them.
Great. Sue, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I'd love to. I agree with Dave, but up to a point. The thing is, I've been on the Northern Beaches long enough and involved with the different business communities here long enough to know that things change over time. And first of all, thinking about the future of business community and what they need and having the employment here, we can't guess what the future's going to be. But what we can see is that, reflecting back on what David did say earlier, we have to make sure that we're not constrictive with our legislation on land use to enable the creative communities to do their thing. So when a new industry comes through, and I'll give an example of Brookvale. Brookvale, I had a trade business there, used to be full of trade businesses. It was the land of car yards, car wreckers, car painters, dent panels, you name it, you could get it at Brookvale. It then changed eventually over into the land of storage space, because you've got lots of cheaper land there that you could put a building on, and you don't need a lot of maintenance for storage except some light globes and a security person or two. That's about it. But it's changing there again. And in the beginning, and if I think of The trampoline place took 18 months to get through because they wanted to trial something new. But from a development application form point of view, there isn't a box to tick to say I'm trialling something new. It's full of all these things that could go wrong and council could be at fault. So there's been a real discussion in trying to loosen that up. For the future, though, we need to make sure that there is ongoing education, there is ongoing business support. Business support used to help all these people who are at home thinking, I want to start a business. I can make my grandmother's, I don't know, apple cake just as good as she can. I'll sell thousands of them. It's that business education about what makes a good business that we really need to bring here. But also then, of course, for the youth who have their entrepreneurial ideas, we've always had an absolute fill of great business mentors here on the Northern Beaches as well. I've been lucky enough to run almost half a dozen mentoring programs on behalf of government over the years. And we have very successful business owners here who would love to reconnect with young people. Entrepreneurship is something that comes because people are isolated here on the Northern Beaches, and it gives them that idea of how can I create a business. They normally, from my experience, see a need 5 to 6 years ahead of when the rest of the community does, and they need that support until that business actually idea takes off. And helping young people who also will have a whole heap of ideas. The world is changing so much. Education, the fact that our TAFE used to create and look after so many apprentices, so much has gone now. So much more I could say, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah. We are getting to the point where we're running short on time, but I want to get through a couple. Everybody's putting their hand up on this one. So I'll start with Brent and then come back to Kristen, if that's all right. Brent.
So the future is around consistency and confidence, like we've stated. That's what business needs. We know 75% of future jobs will come from science, technology, engineering and maths. We already have that prediction. This is around pivoting from what is your traditional business or what is a cheap way to make a quick buck by throwing some storage sheds up, to going to a knowledge-based, smart education system and delivering business-to-business intelligent future business solutions. So this is all that middle section we spoke about earlier, where we can be connected, not through roads or being isolated on a peninsula, but through having meaningful IT solutions and allowing science, technology, engineering and maths to drive future enterprise. This is what the future brings. It's not reliant on imports. It's not reliant on my ability to make a widget or have cheap labour. It is selling what industry and the world needs right from our backyard here in the beaches.
Thanks, Brent. And I know that Kristen, you came in with a background in education, or that was a particular thing you wanted to talk about today, and we've had education now come up a little bit. So let's throw back to you. Based on what these guys have started off on, what do you see as critical over the next few years?
Yeah, look, I think there's sort of two kind of conversations that are taking place. One is about what our entrepreneurs need, and the other is around what education can help them. And I think even within entrepreneurs, there's more than one type of person that we're talking about. For kind of new budding entrepreneurs, I think council has a role to create sort of shared spaces for new businesses or business people starting out. Things like council creating co-work spaces or working with a local business to create those shared use of public space. Things like creator spaces. I mean, some places have the council or a business buys technology, 3D printers, that kind of thing. And then that space is a shared space where people then can rent out use of that. And it means that the overheads for starting something new are a lot lower. And it's actually better for the environment for us to share what we have rather than everyone in this room owning a 3D printer, and really we only need one that we share. I think existing entrepreneurs need something different, and to some extent I can't tell you what you need because every industry is so different in terms of what it needs. I mean, I think there's a few obvious things like having high-speed internet will enable lots of different industries. I talked about stopping residential encroaching into employment lands because I think a lot of our employment lands are being bought by property developers on the basis of speculation that they'll get apartments onto it. And really clear planning rules can help manage some of that speculation to keep our employment lands much more affordable for businesses to rent. I think also entrepreneurship isn't just kind of this intrinsic thing that falls from the sky. It actually starts from people having skills that can enable them to run a business or work for themselves. And it is, it is disappointing that our local TAFE has been underfunded. It has had many popular courses taken away. So if you want to study them, you have to travel outside the area. And I think that that's, it's difficult for council to fix that because ultimately that was a call made by state and federal governments that council, it's really hard for council to kind of do anything other than make a lot of noise about that. But it is such a shame. That being said, I do think that there are things that council can do to help some of our budding entrepreneurs develop skills that will enable them to run their own businesses. So, for example, I think council could do a lot more to offer cadetships and traineeships and apprenticeships as an employer. My dad's a tradie. He got his first job at a state-owned gasworks to be a gas fitter and plumber. That's enabled him to go and start his own business. I have family friends where their first job was to be a gardener for a council, and that's enabled them, once they've finished their apprenticeship, to go on and run their own successful gardening business. So I think that council does have a role in terms of providing educational opportunities. I mean, to give one really kind of flippant example, my sister was looking into becoming a ranger, but you have to have completed a course that is basically useless unless you want to be a ranger. But there is no cadetship to be a ranger, so why would anyone enroll with a course that is useless to them? It makes much more sense to offer a lot of these entry-level jobs as cadetships where people work and study at the same time. And it is unfortunate that council has outsourced many of jobs because as I said, my dad's a tradie. It's very expensive for him to bring on young apprentices, although he has so much wealth of information. But council can make uncommercial decisions to employ apprentices because it offers them training opportunities that they can then take off into the world to run their own businesses. So those are a few thoughts, but there's plenty that can be done. And I think, as I said before, as councillors, I don't see our role as the experts. Our role is to listen to the experts in the community, tell us what their ideas are.
Thank you. I think one of the hard things about moderating discussions like this is you get to the point where we now have to start wrapping up, but this is the kind of conversation that I think we could all literally go on with for hours. So thank you for everybody's input on this one. What I'd like to do now, we do have to wrap up, so I just want to thank all of the candidates that have come here today, and I want to give them one last opportunity. One of the members' questions that came in is, what are your long-term strategic plans for business within the LGA? So I thought this might be a good chance to allow each of the members or candidates to wrap up. So we'll start with Brent and work our way along the couches. And just 1 minute, what do you see as long-term strategic plans for business in the LGA?
Creating a connected environment that allows business to have confidence and courage to keep moving forward. To have a strategic plan that's a living, breathing document, not something that you write and stick in an unusable PDF on a website, that allows business to have the ability to connect to business, connect to the environment, and connect to their end customer. I think what we've learnt today is that confidence and the ability to move is key, and business has always told us that. So strategic-wise, let's create an environment where we use knowledge and council as the conduit to get people in, both from business and from customers.
Thanks, Brent. And David?
There's still work to be done from a perspective of governance and the structure of council and the accountability. And again, once you start working on that, then you can start working on the culture. So my observation over the last 4 years, having come from commercial and government perspective, is that the culture is still a little bit too inward looking and not customer focused. So once you start to get that right, you can start to create the environment where council basically gets out of the way of business as much as they can, of course excluding the legislative and regulatory environment that these businesses may operate in, and facilitate them and not add extra costs and bureaucracy. So strategically, you know, there's smart people on the northern beaches. They know how to grow their businesses under whatever legislation they're in. So we shouldn't be getting in their way. We should be getting out of their way as much as possible. That's my view. And you could probably work out, I forgot to mention I was a Liberal earlier on, so you can probably work that out. I think smaller, effective government is better.
Thanks, David. Yeah, no, we got that at Cut the Red Tape. It's perfect. Thank you. All right, thanks, David. Kristen.
I think that there's a few things that I would like to take to a strategic plan. I think about having a culture of enthusiasm, creativity, flexibility can really help. I've talked about some of my ideas around land use management, but ultimately I kind of want to flip this question on its head in that I don't think it's for councillors or any particular political party to kind of tell the community what a strategic plan for business looks like, because I think the community are the experts. The community knows what it needs. And I think that it's really important that this isn't about councillors making these calls, but actually having proper consultation and making the community, so businesses, the local stakeholders, community groups, bringing everyone to the table to make these plans together. And that's what kind of grassroots democracy looks like, rather than a bunch of boffins deciding that one particular industry is the winner, that's their ticket has come up as the industry we're getting behind. I don't actually think that's a good way to run things. We should be more consultative. So I have ideas, but ultimately I think it's for the community to work with council to make strategic plans for business, not for me to dictate what those plans are.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm looking forward to the name tags changing from councillor to boffin. Nice work. All right, last but not least, Sue Hines.
Okay. I suppose I can speak with a bit of insider knowledge here, being on the Economic and Development Strategic Reference Group, that finally council is working on an economic development plan. That will be a strategic document that does look to at least 5 to 10 years and hopefully beyond. I would like to see, thinking about your 10 to 20 year view, I would like to see, yet again, we've had a really great document in a previous council in the past. I'd like to see that living, breathing document come to life. I'd like to see a business support hub back on the northern beaches like there used to be, to help the small startups and those with a great idea with some guidance to make sure that it continues on a good way. I'd like to see all the chambers of commerce work together so that if a business is deciding to come to the northern beaches, that council helps introduce them and try and work out where's a great space for their business, because council would know their business employment lands well. I'd like to see the future of a business community that works really well together and makes sure that they absolutely embrace the locals to make sure that they come along with them on their journey, whether they're a manufacturer, whether they're a creative. I do believe the creative industries who have been here for years need a bit more of a lift, because they are part of what makes it so much fun to go out and about. I would love to see businesses in the future be able to come to council with their ideas, what they see, and council actually embrace those ideas, advise them about what the challenges would be, what legislation they have to work with for the future to make sure that they don't run into anything. And I suppose the one thing I know that if I get on council this time, there is one piece of legislation I would like to totally get changed for the business community, and that is the development application. Because from what I understand, it doesn't matter whether you are changing use of your shop, putting a big sign out the front, you get the same documents as the person who is renovating their house. And for an average business owner who's never done a DA, but just knows that they've bought a place that used to be a hairdresser and now they want to turn it into something else, they're given a massive document that means nothing to them. So that is one of my big targets for my next time on council. It's got to change. It's traumatised some business owners. It's not right. So I think the future's bright. Our small business community is absolutely enthusiastic. The more that there's a challenge, the more they find a way around it, and I just love that. So I just look forward to the business community of the future on the Northern Beaches.
Thanks, Sue. And thanks everyone on the panel. This has been a great discussion. I wish we could carry it on. It's great to see the passion. It's great to see the professionalism and the fact that we've had 4 very different candidates sit here and all the chairs have remained where they're supposed to be and there's no throwing of things. I was hoping for some more kind of activity, but you know, you guys have been wonderful. So again, my name's Matt Tanks with the Warringah Chamber of Commerce. Please check out our website. Thank you again to our sponsors. We're going to put some links into the chats so that you can go and have a look at them, because again, without them, none of this has been possible. And we just look forward to voting. You can wait till the weekend to vote, or you can get out there and look at some of the pre-polling booths right now. So get out there, make it happen, make your vote count, and we'll see you there.